Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another RVH virtual town hall. I'm Janice Scott, always proud to be your president and CEO. Now, some people are experiencing challenges with Microsoft Teams today, so fingers crossed that we don't have any technical difficulties. We are at a crossroads in this pandemic and a tipping point for hospitals. The pandemic is more than a year old now, but this third wave is like nothing we've seen before and never wanted to imagine. This week, Ontario recorded record high case counts and ICU admissions. Many GTA hospitals are completely overwhelmed and aggressive action had to be taken to preserve bed capacity and keep the system functioning. We're in our third state of emergency, a stay-at-home order, and Ontario hospitals, with the exception of those in the north, have been ordered to stop all non-emergency scheduled surgeries, procedures, and other non-urgent activity. I know how tired you are. It has been a grueling year, and the uncertainty of the situation has left everyone feeling anxious and frightened. Like you, I am very worried about the coming weeks. The situation is escalating rapidly. Today, we are caring for 32 COVID patients. A month ago, we had 3. The hospital is almost full. 7 of the 16 beds in the ICU are occupied with 6 COVID positive patients on ventilators. Despite new directives, increasing numbers, and strain on all of you, I do remain very inspired and humbled by the incredible strength, commitment, and resilience of Team RVH. Thank you. No matter how exceptional the demand, no matter how tight the timeline, no matter how high the hurdle, RVH just digs down a little deeper and you just get the job done with skill, composure, and compassion. Thank you. And although we can't make the path of this pandemic any more certain, we can ensure we continue to keep you well informed through our J&J updates and these town halls. Today's panelists are here to give you an update on our capacity challenges, the surgical ramp down, and address any issues regarding staff redeployment and the current stay-at-home order. So I'm really pleased to welcome Dr. Jeff Tyberg, our Chief of Staff, Nancy Savage, our Executive Vice President, Patient and Family Experience, CNE, and Regional Vice President, Cancer Care Ontario, the longest title, Nancy, and Daryl Sewell, Vice President, Facilities and Chief Human Resources Officer. Welcome, panelists, and Jeff, let's start with you. Now, we hear a lot about capacity challenges in the GTA. Can you paint a picture of the situation here at RVH, and what is the plan should our ICU exceed our capacity?
Well, thank you, Janice, and I'll just start with a little bit of background to give some context to our situation at RVH and how it's tied to the situation in the GTA. We're part of the GTA Incident Management System table. Nancy and I attend the meetings, which are now 7 days a week. And so we're closely tied to the situation. As Janice said, we have over 30 COVID patients. The situation in the GTA itself is even more acute. There are sites that are overwhelmed with 150 COVID patients, 50 in the ICU. Some sites are admitting 24 COVID patients a day, and 40% or more of those patients are converting to be ICU patients. So certainly our capacity is reflective of not only our own needs, which are significant locally and regionally, but they're significant in our role of helping the GTA. And we've already taken 120 or so patients from the GTA, including many critical care patients. I think we've taken 5 just in the last couple of days, and we're just taking a couple more acute patients from William Osler. So we've got a big role to play locally, regionally, and to help the large population of the GTA. We've certainly got a surge plan in our critical care unit. As has already been said, we've ramped down or eliminated elective surgery that requires an ICU bed. Of course, patients who need urgent or emergent surgery are still going to get it, but that creates some capacity. We can ramp up to a surge of up to 37 beds. We've got our ICU of 16 beds. We've already moved into the CCU with 7 beds. We've got plans for PACU and for endoscopy, another 14 beds. I think we've got a really good capacity plan. Speaking to Dr. Chris Martin, I think they've got a good physician human resource plan. I think we've got good nursing and other allied care plans as well. Big strain on our staff, on our physician staff, and a major strain on our nursing staff as well. But I think we're well prepared to go up to 37, beyond that if we need to, but we certainly think we'll be able to care for the patients here and continue to support the GTA as those critical care numbers rise.
Thanks, Jeff. And it would be hard to imagine that we would go beyond the 37 ICU beds that are in our capacity plan, but Let's for a moment just assume the worst. What are the broader system and patient implications when ICU beds are at capacity?
So, there's a need for critical care beds, and of course they're needed for COVID, but there are other patients continue to get sick as well, and those beds are needed. So the first system implication when ICU beds reach capacity is, have we maximized every bed available in the system? So that's why we're seeing things like Sick Kids is opening pediatric ICU beds for adults. The CHEO is about to do the same thing. So the first thing is we have to maximally expand our ICU capacity. A lot of long-term ventilation patients are being transferred to other sites now. So all kinds of creative solutions are taking place, as well as some patients who might have gone to ICU before, like those on high flow nasal oxygen, for example. Can we manage those patients on the floor if we manage them carefully? So we're going to cut down on any elective use of the ICU. We're going to absolutely maximize with creative solutions, and we're going to distribute patients. We're going to load share across the province as much as is feasible with transport. We're going to load share those critical care patients across the province, and that's why we're already moving patients to London and Peterborough, RVH, beyond Niagara. We're going to do that. The system is really hoping that even with projected numbers, we're not going to hit a situation, we don't use the word triage anymore, but that we don't have to make difficult choices for patients based on their predicted outcome. I think there's a strong feeling at the table and provincially that we really don't want to get there, and hopefully we're not going to get there. And hopefully with all of these creative solutions, we're going to just absolutely maximize the care we're able to provide. We have enough ventilators, and we won't have to get into a triage type of situation.
Thanks, Jeff, and hopefully ramp up getting vaccines in arms as quickly as possible.
Absolutely, great call.
Since December, we have accepted over 120 patients from overwhelmed hospitals in the GTA. So Jeff, can you tell us more about the GTA transfer plan and what are the domino effects as we bring that number of additional patients into our hospital?
Yeah, so as GTA is dealing with millions of patients, and there's some real hotspots such as in Brampton and in Scarborough, and so really the IMS table is kind of taking a broad approach. Like they're trying to increase capacity by opening, for example, Cordalucci Vaughan site that was supposed to be a regular hospital, now is essentially a COVID hospital. But there are a number of different types of transfers that take place. There's a large number of proactive transfers, that is looking at the situation down the road. Which patients do we need to move this week because of what we're anticipating is going to happen by the end of the week? So that's sort of one type of transfer. A lot of ALC patients have been moved out of hospitals to other sites, and significant pressure is being put on some of these rehab, palliative care sites to accept patients. The other creative sites have been open, like at the Convention Centre, part of Toronto Grace Hospital. So really trying to decrease ALC in hospitals in order so that we can bring acute care patients into hospitals as well. And then every day we meet and we look at, do we need any rescue transfers? So that's sites that are overwhelmed, even if we have directives in motion. Today, for example, Osler continues to be hard hit. So they're talking about moving 10 to Ontario Health West, 10 to Cordalucci Vaughan. We stepped up and accepted 2 patients as well. So a lot of different things, balls in motion, all at the same time, all again trying to load share, make sure that we don't have any safety or critical care incidents anywhere in the system. And I have to say, and it's been said, that never has it been seen that the system has worked so effectively together as a system to help all the patients in the province, for which we all have a responsibility. And I also want to mention how many times RVH has been called out for their contribution to the GTA, and to thank every single person on this call and every other person that you know for the work that you've done, how appreciated it is, not just locally and regionally, but in the GTA, that RVH has really stepped up as a team and has made a significant contribution, and you can tell they continue to count on us for a contribution in the future. So it's been great to be part of Team RVH, and everybody in this organization should be proud of the contribution that they've made.
Thanks so much, Jeff. And there was a change for us this week, as well as we actually have 30 alternate level care patients being safely transferred out of our organization this week. Is that correct?
That's true, and 15 going to the region and 15 going to the Grace SEC. There's been some changes made in consent. We may talk about that, but we did have the highest ALC burden in the province, and if we were going to help the GTA, we really needed help with those patients, and now we have gotten some help to move those 30 out. So that's helped create some acute care capacity for us, which is really the types of patients we should care for with the highly qualified staff that we have at RVH.
Thanks, Jeff, and you're always so good at recognizing everyone else, but it's my opportunity to thank you for your leadership, always, but 7 days a week for this GTIMS has been quite grueling. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
It is important to note that RVH has worked hard throughout the pandemic to create additional capacity as well, again, in response to the pandemic. Remember, we have up to 70 beds in the Regional Pandemic Response Unit, and we're continuing to recruit staff, which will enable us to open more beds in our field hospital. There are 34 beds on Respiratory 2, our former Centre for Education and Research. They're now opened. We have 29 additional beds throughout the health centre as our approach to trying to end hallway medicine. And of course, we also have 27 beds in our transitional care unit at the IOF Seniors Home. In an effort to create capacity, on Monday, all scheduled non-emergency surgeries and procedures were cancelled in Ontario, with the exception of the North. This will preserve critical care bed capacity, also ensure hospitals have enough staff to safely care for patients, particularly those requiring intensive care. We recognize how difficult and frustrating this second ramp down is for patients, for physicians, for their families, for our staff, and particularly for those procedures that were already delayed once due to the pandemic. So Nancy, welcome. And what does this provincial ramp down mean for RVH?
Good afternoon, everybody. And Janice, I think Jeff did a terrific job painting the picture as to why we needed to have a provincial ramp down. So when we think back to wave one, when we had our first ramp down, we basically focused on emergent and urgent cases. And that's what we're directed to do, and that's what we'll continue to do. So that means that in our ORs, those are the volumes of work that we're doing. In our cardiac unit, we're just doing urgent and emergent work there, so no elective CATs. And as well in our diagnostic imaging department, no elective procedures in our IR suites. So that just kind of gives you a little bit of a view in the surgical and procedural end, but it doesn't end there. So we had done a lot of work during the first wave on our ambulatory care as well. And so each of the program directors with their medical directors and chiefs would also be continuing to review ambulatory work and making sure that we're only seeing those patients that absolutely required to be seen. And you will also note everybody has had the experience whereby during the first wave, we reverted to a lot of virtual visits. Well, they've been sustained since then. So we're actually being able to maintain access for our patients through virtual means, and then through a clinical decision, it would be determined if they need to have an on-site visit. We also had some lessons learned from the first wave when we cut a ramp down just so abruptly, I would say, as per directed, that there were patients after a few weeks of being ramped down that that we should have seen. I'll give an example. I use this one all the time because Kelly McRae shared it with me, that post-operative patients who had amputations needed to have gait training, and we set all those resources were reallocated elsewhere, and it was like, oh, stop. So we've learned from that. And there were a few other areas as well. So we're living to the spirit of the directive. And we'll continue to assess our patients on an ongoing basis so that even those who might be considered non-urgent today, 2, 3, 4 weeks time might be more of an urgent status and we need to see them.
Thanks, Nancy. And when we had completed the first ramp down a year ago, we had well over 4,500 patients on a wait list. And our surgical program has done a wonderful job on catching up on the patients on the wait list. But we still had 2,500 patients who were waiting for their surgery since the last ramp down in March of 2020. So how will this second ramp down impact our ongoing surgical backlog? And what is the impact on patients, many of whom have been waiting a long time for their procedure?
Well, I want to give you a little bit of an update on what we have done over time. And so provincially, this is a struggle with all sites. All sites are lagging behind in what would have been their traditional volumes. We've been able to proceed with a brief recovery phase from January to March. Few interruptions along the way, but during that period of time, we ran 2 extra late rooms Monday to Friday and an extra elective room on Saturday and on Sunday. Patients were so appreciative of being able to have opportunity to have their procedures done, as were our surgeons. It was a productive time, but exhausting. There's no doubt about it. Team RVH once again came to the plate. They delivered and they were tired at the end of it. So while we wait for all our coded surgical data, I can tell you our unofficial data tells us that we were able to complete 85% of our hips, 71% of our knees, and we overperformed on all our cataracts. Our wait times within our cancer procedures are excellent. We know that we prioritize those procedures. So that's how we ended the year. But there are still patients waiting. And our surgeons' offices are constantly prioritizing their wait lists. So now here we go into a second wave. Surgical backlog is going to continue to grow. There's no ifs, ands, or ors about it. Patients will be anxiously awaiting their surgery or their opportunity to have their surgery when the directive is listed. It is a constant state of reprioritizing those patients. We are continuing to do emergent and urgent, as we know, and those would include the vascular and the cancer cases. So no one really needs to worry about that unless we get to a point in this pandemic when we're just doing truly life or limb. And we hope we don't get there. Now, if patients feel that their conditions have worsened while they are, waiting to get back into the hospital for their procedure, they are always encouraged to reach out to their physician's offices so that they can be reassessed and determined if their ability or need to get into the hospital is escalated.
Thanks, Nancy, and let's have a big shout out to the surgical program leadership for really working on that wait list, and the numbers, the percentages that you shared today are really impactful. So thank you very much, team. A little different topic, but very important. In alignment with the stay-at-home order, we have also undertaken visitor restrictions. They're really in place right now, and we know that it makes it difficult for patients and for families, and therefore it's very difficult for the staff who are on the units and the physicians who are caring for those patients. So how is RVH filling the gaps for those patients who are really missing connection with their loved ones?
Well, there's a few different ways, and we certainly recognize the anxiety that this causes with our patients and our families, but everybody needs to continue to remember that we have an obligation to ensure safety for all, including our visitors, Team RVH, and the community at large. So what have we done? We continue to support patients and families virtually, and where possible, we'll help them connect via telephone, Skype, FaceTime. In fact, we do have a plan that is under development to pilot a position using redeployed staff to take a more active role in this, allowing unit staff to focus on direct patient care. We have a comprehensive visitor appeal process to support patients and families that are experiencing extenuating circumstances that may require a visit. In fact, we have reviewed a total of 37 unique requests, and we have approved 33 of them. And then lastly, I'd like to mention it was beginning of March through Val Smith and team. We've launched a virtual volunteer program on specialized seniors with a rollout to IOOF coming next week. Patients can benefit from a one-on-one virtual visit with a volunteer up to 3 times a week. Once a week, St. John's Ambulance will conduct virtual pet therapy with a small group of patients. As soon as it's safe to do so, Janice, of course, we're looking to welcome our visitors back in the building and our volunteers.
Thanks, Nancy. Yes, we all miss those volunteers, our Blue Brigade, but they'll come back when it's safe, and that's what's important.
Yes.
Thanks a lot, Nancy, for this, of course, but I also want to highlight your incredible leadership. I think as the challenges pile on, you seem to get more energy. So thank you for all of that and for all you're doing to ensure our clinical leadership.
Thank you.
As we ramp down all non-emergency surgeries and procedures, some members of Team RVH may be redeployed to other areas of a health center where needs are greatest. So we have Daryl Sewell with us today. Welcome again, Daryl. And he's here to explain how the ramp down will affect Team RVH. So Daryl, we've developed a redeployment plan earlier in the pandemic. What does the plan look like in wave 3?
Thanks very much, Janice. If I can take just a brief moment just to call out and thank all those staff who have been and will be redeployed, those who have stepped up and volunteered to work in our long-term care and our retirement home settings, all the staff that have remained behind on RVH units and departments, and those staff who are working remotely, preserving PPE and reducing congestion on site, and to all the leaders and credentialed staff who continue to do whatever is asked of them. Just thank you so much. In response to your question, Janice, when we think about redeployment of staff in Wave 3, we think in two terms. We think of internal redeployment, which is the movement of RVH staff from within, and external redeployment, the movement of people into RVH from external sources, or the movement of RVH staff perhaps out to external sources. So I'm going to address initially just the internal redeployment first in response to your question. With the ramp down, we've heard about the ramp down of surgical services and related activities. Some members of Team RVH needed to be deployed into alternate work assignments. Many of these individuals have been placed into positions already that best meet their recent experience, expertise, and qualifications. And in turn, other staff have been freed up to move into roles working more closely with patients, thereby supporting greater COVID patient care capacity at RVH. Of course, everyone's flexibility in accepting alternate work assignments is greatly appreciated at this time, and be assured that you will only be deployed into work that you're qualified to perform.
Thanks, Daryl. The province has also introduced a temporary emergency order enabling redeployment of home and community care staff to hospitals. Can you tell us a bit more about the potential for redeployment across the healthcare system?
Absolutely, and my response on this one will be about that external deployment. We know that Ontario Regulation 271/21 came out last week and shared with us, and it provides information about the transfer of home and community care staff to be deployed and made available to hospitals to assist hospitals in high priority areas. RVH has been identified as eligible to receive deployment of hospital or home and community care staff, given the high number of patients we've received from the GTA. I think Jeff shared with us it's over 120 patients at this time. So the process is still being determined. And as a matter of fact, we have a call later this afternoon, Nancy and a number of us, to learn more about the details around home and community care. And when they do arrive at RVH, we certainly want to welcome them to our teams. These HCC staff are intended to free up RVH staff who are more qualified to move into roles working more closely with patients, thereby again supporting greater capacity for care of COVID patients at RVH. The other regulation that we need to keep in mind that's been in place for about a year now is Ontario Regulation 74/20, which allows us to transfer employees from RVH from one hospital to another hospital. RVH utilized this regulation last year when staff were stepped up and volunteered, in some cases, to be deployed to long-term care settings. At this time, we have no plans for this type of deployment, but if in the future we do need to consider this because we're directed to do so, again, we'll be soliciting staff to volunteer first and foremost.
Thanks, Daryl. Well, we're almost a week into the latest 4-week stay-at-home order, and the province has now indicated in-school learning will not resume after the spring break. So what does Team RVH need to keep in mind about the state of emergency and the return to online learning?
Oh boy, I think about those staff, and for those staff who have school-age children, you know, I can only imagine the parenting roller coaster that you and your children have been on in the past year. Just first and foremost, please remember to avail yourself of the many different supports available to you, including, of course, the advice and information through our EFAP provider, Homewood. And as we all know, everyone is critical to the successful delivery of patient care in our operations at this time, and perhaps maybe more than ever. So please plan accordingly for alternate childcare arrangements. However, we do know that best laid plans from time to time fall short. So if you anticipate the need for a leave due to your inability to attend work related to childcare or other issues, please contact your leader as soon as possible to discuss any applicable leaves or accommodation requirements and the process if it's required. In terms of our absence scenario document, most people have heard about this over the past year. I'd refer you to, in particular, 2 scenarios that are in that absence scenario document, number 7 and number 15, to learn about any pay treatments that apply, Employment Standards Act rights and associated programs and supports. In particular, 2 that might be important in this case would be the family responsibility leave and the infectious disease emergency leave. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy to help guide you, but reach out to your leader initially and let them know about any leave requirements that you might have.
Thanks, Daryl. We're navigating this both obviously at work, but certainly at home as well. And there's nothing more important to us, always our people, but surely through the pandemic, it's all about our people. So I want to thank you as well for being our Chief Human Resources Officer and the leadership you provide, not only internally, but also externally in our region. Thanks, Daryl.
Privilege.
So again, as we conclude, I want to recognize Team RVH's exceptional commitment, flexibility, and hard work. I can't make your days any less busy, but as your President and CEO, what I can do is to ensure RVH is well prepared to respond to this escalating 3rd wave, and that we do everything possible to keep you and our patients safe. Remember, we have a critical care plan to follow, and in contrast to Wave 1, our PPE supplies and equipment are all in good shape. You are all well trained, and you know what you need to do. I recognize that you're exhausted, but I need to ask you to continue to dig down deep and don't let your guard down. Our region is really counting on us. Please continue to support one another, to be kind to one another, and let your leader know if you are struggling. We do have resources, as Daryl mentioned, in place, and we can assist you. We know Ontario is now in a race against time between the vaccines and the variants. As the province continues to expand its immunization program, we hope the summer will signal the return of some sense of normalcy in our lives. As we conclude this town hall, I want to share a note of thanks from one of our patients, a reminder of the important work we continue to do every day, despite the challenges of the pandemic. I'd like to say thank you for the excellent care that RVH staff have provided to my family over the last few months. My father required 2 outpatient surgeries, and the entire experience went smoothly on both occasions. Also in February, I received care during the delivery and recovery after the birth of my 2 sons. Again, the staff delivered excellent care. I'm sure that stress levels are much higher for all of you during the pandemic, so it's to everyone's credit that patient care continues to be of high quality. Thank you on behalf of my whole family, Eleanor A. Excellent letter and really deep reminder of all the good work that you're doing. So thank you, Team RVH. Your commitment, care, and compassion does not go unnoticed. Please stay the course, stay safe, and stay strong. Remember, we're in this together and there are brighter days ahead. Take care.